and it provides certain cautious optimism that our American colleagues can convince Ukrainian partners to be more reasonable and to be more serious about negotiations. We'll see how things will develop. Our position remains the same as it was announced from the very beginning. We think that the conflict, first of all, negotiations should address not only the ceasefire as such, but the root causes of the conflict, which doesn't have much to do with Ukraine, but with the security concerns Russia has for many years. With the development of NATO, with the advancement of NATO, with an encircling of Russia with foreign bases. And unless this risk, this threat is not addressed, there will be no way out for this conflict. Secondly, of course, Ukraine must come to reality and understand that what has been done over 3 years would not change. I mean about territorial changes. Another issue which also should be discussed thoroughly is the situation with human rights in Ukraine, especially about the Russian-speaking population, who were deprived of their right to speak Russian language and to teach their children in Russian. Just imagine a similar situation somewhere in Ireland or in Belgium, when the countries can speak 3 or 4 languages with no any risk to be arrested or fined. But Ukraine, though proclaiming its European future, has chosen another track. So, as I said, much depends on the political will of all states concerned. Unfortunately, the European Union has not very much supportive of the solution, of the searches for peaceful solution of the crisis. They continue refueling the crisis with arms supplies, with financing Ukrainian army, even thinking about providing their so-called peacekeepers, which is for our point of view is a kind of a foreign intervention, and if it is the case, they will become the legitimate target, and it was made clear from our government. So we'll see. We'll see how this process develops. We'll see what the second round of talks, though it is not yet set, will look like and will end up with. And of course, on the agenda as well, and we heard it yesterday, President Trump is looking forward to meet President Putin in person. And we hope that if such contact takes place, it can bring certain novelty to the situation as such. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let me also have the European interpretation of this problem. Minister Faslovan, do you see any possibility that the US efforts, President Trump administration efforts with regard to the negotiations and mediation, if there is any way to accommodate also this process with what the European Union is looking for, so that the European Union also could be a partner to the possible, peace talks and the possible, settlement in the future?
Yeah. Personally, I'm absolutely convinced that the time has come to have now around about 1.5 years of still stand at the battlefield, where the progress of the Russian army is around about 20-30 kilometers. For me, this is only a tactical size. It's only minimal for 1.5 years of very fierce fighting. So far, the cost, not only for the armament, but also the lives, wounded people and so on, for both sides are horrible. And time certainly is ripe and mature to go into a peace system. I also want to talk from my very personal analysis, you know. I cannot imagine that a formal peace treaty between Russia and Ukraine could be the end. Why? Of course, Ukraine cannot renounce for 20% of its territory. Just say, okay, this is not Ukraine anymore. On the other hand, Putin or Russia has more or less annexed legally, I mean with his legal system, 4 oblasts: Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhzhia, and Kherson. So far, he also has more or less the law of the state against just leaving parts of these territories, of these oblasts, with Ukraine. Therefore, I rather think there will not be an official peace treaty, but more or less a ceasefire, because no side will acknowledge that the other side now is the legal owner of this or that territory. This is what I see. And when we are looking, you know, what can European Union do, what should it do? I would say the following. Of course, if you compare Russia with Ukraine, Russia is by far stronger. It has, okay, let me say 3 times, 4 times maybe the capability of Ukraine. And therefore, for the future stability of Ukraine, possibly it also will be necessary to have somebody who will more or less help Ukraine, you know, not to be too weak in front of Russia. This is the case. And I think no, for sure, no European country, whether this is France or Germany or whoever, does have any interest in gaining anything in Ukraine or in Russia. You can be absolutely sure. And therefore, I could imagine that there also can be found a way, I don't know, to accept this. I do not want to go into details, because you can discuss hours and days and weeks about all the... but what we have to get in the future is a constellation that maybe is not a legal peace treaty, but something that will be so stable that it can have the function of a peace treaty. And this means that both sides should have enough strength that it cannot be overtaken within a few hours or days by the other side. From the Ukrainian side, this is not the question anyhow, I would say, and insofar this will be the big question in order to get a bit closer. I know this is difficult. And also, there are some extra questions to be talked about it, but I could imagine, you know, sooner or later, this should be possible, because I think also Putin is a reasonable man. He's intelligent. Maybe sometimes he's stubborn a little bit. I don't know, you know him better. But okay, he knows what he wants. And I'm sure that in the long run, he's interested in having also more opportunities, well, to make Russia great again. Let me say it this way.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Abdul Mahdi, yesterday Baghdad hosted the Arab League meeting. What is your evaluation if that meeting, if there was any prospects or any visions to resolve the ongoing challenges in the Arab world, including the situation in Syria and including the I mean the Palestinian issue, which is the very root causes of the many problems in the region. Do you see any possibility for that? What is your evaluation of that meeting in Baghdad?
شكرا. اولا معلوم
از جمله موضوع سوریه
Speaking of the Syrian issue and the issue of Palestine, I wonder whether those issues were discussed. I mean, that's the root cause of the problems in the region. What is...
المراحل الماضية.
امروز ما حتی سازمان ملل رو
Today,
کارایی نمی‌بینیم.
even the UN lacks efficiency, and we see the international organizations lacking efficiency. They are incapable of doing anything. And speaking of the International Court of Justice, for example, they cannot enforce the law. They cannot actually implement and enforce the arrest warrants that they have issued. The Arab League is an opportunity to have a meeting. This is a positive event. We should not exaggerate its capacities. It's, of course, at the same time, it's not useless to have talks, to have meetings, and to emphasize the principles. That can be considered as a positive event. And for sure, today we have a major crisis, and we have to address that crisis immediately. That's the issue of Gaza, the Islamic Arab states and world countries in general. They should consider an end to this open massacring, this act of Holocaust unfolding in Gaza. Every day, more than 100 persons are martyred, hundreds of others are wounded, and they later attain martyrdom. In the West Bank, in Lebanon, and in other places, we are witnessing similar events. We are in need of certain actions that will not be taken by international bodies. Such actions can be taken by governmental bodies or international organizations. We should all resist and stand in the face of such an act of massacre, and we should put an end to this act of massacre. The history will make judgment about these events and will make judgment about those who did nothing to terminate this act of massacre. It's necessary to take action today, and we should at the same time praise the stances by certain countries, such as countries in Europe, in Latin America, and in Africa, and also in our region, and also the courageous stances adopted by the Islamic Republic of Iran. And great sacrifices have been made in order to defend justice and fairness. We are paying a heavy price in Iraq and also other countries such as Yemen. They are also paying a heavy price in order to defend this issue. We are in need of practical actions. And I personally consider power and strength as the only solution to this problem, because the other side has violated international rules and has violated religious and humanitarian principles. It just understands the language of force and power. So if we want to urge the other party, we can just use strength and power. In the absence of power, such atrocities will go on.
مسئله سوریه
You mentioned the issue of Syria.
سوریه در سوریه وضعیت دگرگون شد
There was a major development in Syria. There was a change in Syria's geopolitics, and Iran and the Hezbollah had influence there. And Syria was part of the axis of resistance, but the situation has changed, and the threat against what Israel claimed to be a threat against it has been removed, and today we are witnessing Syria's bombardment and occupation of new areas there. The Israelis have been attacking and occupying for almost 7 decades now. World leaders speak of Israel's right of self-defense, but Israel is an occupying regime, and it has breached international norms and rules. So at the current juncture, I consider this only solution to have power. There are many resources with respect to power. For example, to reject forced displacement. When we oppose forced displacement, in this way we will stop enemies' greed in acting in an atrocious way. We should become more powerful. I believe if the Islamic Republic of Iran did not have such power, it would have experienced another war with respect to the issue of Palestine and the nuclear issue. If Iran did not have this power, it would have come under attack. And this is a major parameter for the realization of fairness and justice and peace.
But you are close to us, maybe we can hear you. Please identify yourself. Okay, and please identify yourself first. Yes, please.
For us, yes.
بلند شید که قشنگ بشنوه. یکم بلندتر صحبت کنید. دوستان فنی اگه میکروفون دارن بیارن. سوال کوتاه باشه لطفاً.
Yes, I said I would like to thank the panelists.
Technical friend, if you have any extra microphone, please give it to my friend.
Of course, I would, if I had the chance, I would have loved to.
تشکر می‌کنم از دوستان پنلیست.
Panelists, the gentlemen, but I would prefer, in light of the time constraint, to address my question to.
خب عرض میکنم تشکر میکنم از پنلیست ها و خیلی گوش دادم به دقت و خیلی دوست داشتم که البته از در پنل های قبلی هم ما سوالاتی داشتیم وقت نبود.
And it's a very key word because we are living at a juncture and the world community is witnessing.
خب میخوام بپرسم از وزیر دفاع سابق اتریش چون صحبت‌هایی از ایشون یا فراسایی از صحبت‌های ایشون نظر من رو جلب کرد. میخوام راجع به رهیافت اروپایی‌ها سوال بکنم. راجع به حالا تعیین روابط با ایران.
It has reached a strange which is unprecedented.
یکی دیگر از پنلیست‌ها به هولوکاست جدید اشاره کرد، هولوکاستی که اسرائیل به
the application of double standards, especially when it comes to humanitarian values and norms, human rights norms. But it has reached a strange extent, I mean, which is unprecedented as far as concerned. Where there are more than 180,000 individual Palestinian people have been killed or injured, where there are verdicts, legal verdicts by the ICJ and the ICC against Netanyahu and his defense minister, and they are practically on the wanted list. They are supposed to be indicted and arrested and put to a trial just to serve, to take a practical step toward justice. And yes, I'm just concluding. I would just like to know how would it be justifiable that we continue to witness preferred treatment of the European countries vis-a-vis the refugees, for example, from Ukraine, and how they are welcomed in certain countries. And when it comes to Palestinian refugees, and when they are in the war situation, they are being ignored the possibility to be offered some humanitarian assistance. And there is no, for example, effort from Brussels to reprimand one of the EU members, such as Hungary, who is ready to go all the way to withdraw from Rome status in order to host Netanyahu. These are questions which really needs an answer. I know you're representing the whole EU as a whole, but
thank you. Okay. Next.
I would appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
نائب الدكتور فراس المسلماوي عن مجلس النواب العراقي، وسؤالي للسيد عادل عبد المهدي: كيف تجدون موقف مجلس النواب العراقي في تجريب التطبيع مع الكيان الصهيوني الغاصب أولاً؟ وثانياً، كيف ترون السياسة الخارجية للحكومة العراقية الحالية في صناعة رؤية خاصة بالعراق تجنب العراق أن يكون طرفاً في الصراع دون التنازل عن المبادئ في الدفاع عن فلسطين وشعبها وموقفها الأخير من غزة ولبنان؟ شكراً لكم.
Okay, Paolo. Inja. The last question, please.
نقش پارلمان عراق در برمنگاری عادی‌سازی روابط با چیست؟
What is the role of the Iraqi parliament with respect to the normalization policy, and what is Iraq's foreign policy with respect to involvement in a conflict without refraining from defending the rights of the Palestinians? Thank you very much.
In that direction.
Thank you. Okay, we have two questions for each of the panelists. Dr. Faslaban, would you please start?
Yeah, I think everybody just can look at the situation in Gaza as an absolutely catastrophic situation where you only can miss the words. The problem that I see is, that we are confronted with a situation where you have an extreme government. Bibi Netanyahu is extreme. If you look to his ministers, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, then he has decisive ministers in his governments who do not try to ease the situation, but they are rather putting oil into the fire, even in this situation. And you can see that most of the European countries have reacted, at least verbally. The problem that I see is that Bibi Netanyahu more or less doesn't have any corrective. Nobody tells him what he should do. Nobody really tries to stop him in his actions. Normally, this probably the United States should do, but they are not doing it in this case because the Israeli politics are so interwoven with the American that the outcome is a big, big damage, not only for America's image, but also for the Western image. That's what I see, and therefore we only can hope that sooner or later, not sooner or later, as fast as possible, this killing can be stopped and that we can help the people over there. Because also the humanitarian situation. It's not only the fact that around about 30,000 absolutely innocent children are killed by bullets, that they hunger, that they do not have medicine. This is a catastrophe where really the whole world has to react. This is what I see. And this is not a question of political positions or whatever. This is not possible.
Thank you. Dr. Abdul Mahdi, if you wish to answer the question by the Iraqi gentleman.
نعم. أولا حول مسألة التطبيع. طبعا
It's not possible to transfer medicine to that region, and the issue must not be politicized, and it should be possible to transfer aid. I personally support what has been approved by the Iraqi parliament because it has opposed normalization. The first normalization that was done by Egypt, it was done by governments, and the nations never had normalization with Israel, and all nations have rejected normalization, and also in Egypt and some other governments that have normalized their relations. It does not have any clear planning, and the other party does not normalize relations. Since the Oslo talks, at the time of Yasser Arafat, when the talks started, they were looking for a solution, but the other party, did it also look for a two-state solution? No. The other party is not committed to anything. Even when they had normalization with Egypt, they did not, the other side did not comply. Speaking of the Rafah crossing, Israel has occupied that crossing. Normalization is just a term aimed at forcing the Arab nation systems to bow down in order to further dominate the Arabs. What happened in Syria, for example? Israel has bombarded Syria yesterday because Israelis just think about their own interests. They pay no attention to others' interests. Therefore, we are in need of a solution outside the framework of normalization. This is not an issue of Palestinians, Arabs, or Israel. The only thing that can be done is to hold a referendum, and through a referendum one can make the final decision. But speaking of balance in foreign diplomacy, I did not want to respond to this question, but there is a wrong perception with respect to foreign relations. A balance in foreign relations means defending the interests of a country in foreign relations and in foreign policy. To say that I will establish that balance and later think about national interests, that's wrong. One should pay more attention to national interests Congress. I was the Prime Minister. And I said that we should pursue our national interests in relation with our neighboring countries, Turkey, Iran, and so on. And but the Americans told us, you are either with us or against us. And we said that we cannot be the enemies of our neighbors. We said that we cannot actually give up our neighbors because we do have many commonalities, including cultural and religious commonalities. But the U.S. condition was either you are against us or with us or against us. And they wanted us to stop our cooperation with neighbors. And the Americans threatened us that they said that we're going to put you on the terror list. But we had to pay attention to the interests of our neighbors and other countries. But speaking of supporting the resistance, if it's religious and legal resistance, it is legal and religious based on international documents. And the UN considers Israel as an occupying country, as an occupier. It is the legitimate right of every nation to stand in the face of an occupier, to resist an occupier, and the Islamic Republic of Iran has actually acted based on this rule, and the same is true about China. And we have also supported resistance, and Palestine is resisting in a legitimate manner. But if one is after tarnishing this image, after tarnishing the image of resistance, that is not acceptable.
The status we are now passing through in world affairs. You see that the global instruments of governance, they stopped working properly. The United Nations actually goes idle. There are no international law anymore which is respected by the governments, by the states. And on each case, each country reacts the way it wants, or depending on the quality of bilateral situations with one country or another. For example, the distinguished representative from Austria just said about reaction of European Union. But as far as Russia is concerned, European Union introduced thousands and thousands sanctions against Russia for what it's doing in Ukraine. We can have different idea how we call it, but anyway, but there was not a single sanction against Israel, for example, from the European Union. Though the atrocities there, they just make people think very bad. So let's hope that sooner rather than later we'll pass through this turbulent time, and we'll pass through this transition, and we'll manage to find another building blocks on which we can construct our future architecture of security worldwide and region-wide. That's what I can say.
Thank you, Minister Rudenko. Minister, sorry, we don't have any time. We are behind the schedule, so I'm really sorry. Maybe we can put your question for the next panel. Do you want to add something very brief, if...
I just wanted to add a few words to the situation in Europe. You know, Europe was absolutely surprised when Russia invaded Ukraine. It was a surprise for everybody. And nobody thought that this country could withstand the Russian aggression. And of course, now we are in a situation, 3 years of war, that everybody also had become aware that this is not only a question of security and safety for Ukraine, but also for the whole of Europe, at least for the whole of the European Union. And therefore, when I said before, you know, that Europe doesn't have a common foreign and security and defense policy, now we are for the first time in the status to start one, due to this experience we have, in order to be ready to defend ourselves if there comes any danger in the future. This is a lesson we have taken out of this horrible war. That's what I wanted to say, and I only can hope that we will manage not only to have big expenses, but also to be much, much more effective in the future in order to safeguarding our security. Because the lesson is, you can have as much diplomacy as possible, but at the end, it's only your own strength that will keep somebody away from your own territory.
Okay, thank you. I'm grateful for our panelists. Sorry, we don't have... Okay, please, very brief.
Уважаемые участники, я на русском языке. Адресую мой вопрос представителю России и Казахстана.
We don't have any Russian translation for this session. Okay, you will help. Okay, okay, good.
Адресую вопрос представителю России и всем участникам сегодняшнего конференции. Во-первых, для возникновения войны не виновата Россия, а виновата Европа и Америка. Поэтому то, что Россия вынуждена была объявлять войну против Украины. Европейская сторона провоцирует ситуацию. Поэтому вопрос представителю России. То, что позавчера произошла встреча в Стамбуле между Украиной и Россией. Хорошие итоги. Обмен пленных 1000 человек. Это хорошие итоги. Идет процесс, переговорный процесс. Но европейские государства в лице Макрона, Стармера, Мерца вступают против, провоцируют ситуацию. Они односторонне поддерживают Зеленского, оскорбляют Путина. Поэтому это очень больной вопрос.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Сказать, что как вы относитесь насчет позицию европейского государства? В том числе и можно австрийский представитель ответить, потому что Европа виновата в этом.
ایشون به عنوان نماینده کشور قرقیزستان که توی این فروم شرکت کردن می‌خواستن که سوالشون به زبان روسی به نماینده کشور روسیه اعلام بکنن. در وهله اول اعلام کردن که توی جنگی که اتفاق افتاده عملا روسیه شروع کننده جنگ نبوده و میشه گفتش که مقصر نیستش به خاطر اینکه ناتو این جنگ رو شروع کرد و روسیه جوری
And it can be said that NATO has started this war. I'm saying that with respect to the talks between Russia and Ukraine, and they've spoken about the prisoner swap. Unfortunately, European countries are still hampering positive developments. I wanted to learn about the views of the Russian representative and also the representative of Austria.
Sorry, the time is over. I'm really sorry. I apologize. The time is over. And I think your comment is already, was under discussion in this panel by both the European voice and the Russian voice. So we can have also some other get-togethers out of this hall to discuss more about this. I'm really sorry. And with regard to your question, Paolo, as I'm moderating this panel, I'm not eligible and I'm not supposed to answer your question. We have a panel on Palestine, we have a panel on the West Asia, and we have also a panel on, let's say, Syria. So there are very good, discussants there, and you can listen to them, and we can also discuss together. Thank you so much. Thank you, the esteemed audience, and I would like to ask you kindly to reunion for the next panel on decoding the world order. Very interesting panel and very interesting discussions. Thank you.
Viewers, you were just listening live to the panel which was being held in Tehran on the 6th anniversary, 6th edition of the Tehran Forum, which is being held in the Tehran capital. On the panel, we had the former Prime Minister of Iraq, as well as the former Defense Minister of Austria, as well as a representative from the Russian Federation. Each of them spoke on the issue with regards to their countries and the world view from their perspective. The former Prime Minister of Iraq spoke about the need for a permanent solution to the issue of Israel as it concerned the region, not just Palestine. He spoke about how the countries of the region must disregard their differences and come together to formulate a lasting solution to this issue. He also spoke about the U.S. interventionist policy as it concerned the region, and saying that the region must stick together as it concerned the United States interventionist policies. From the Austrian side, the former defense minister of Austria spoke about the role of the EU and as it concerned the Russian-Ukraine conflict. He spoke about the fact that both the Ukrainian and the Russian side, must find a lasting solution as it concerns their territorial integrity, because he said Ukraine might not accept the fact that some of its territories are now in control of Russia, and he said that both countries must find a lasting solution in order to come to a peace agreement. And from the Russian Federation side, the Russians spoke about the issue in Ukraine, spoke about the fact that the European Union has not played a positive role as it concerned finding a lasting solution to the issue. He pointed out to the thousands of sanctions that have been imposed on Russia, while comparing that to the fact that the European Union has yet to give a single sanction on Israel, even though the atrocities committed by the Israelis are far worse than what we might be witnessing in the Russian-Ukraine war. So we're now waiting for the next panel to start here in Tehran, and we have been covering that for you. Let me just give you a quick brief on some of the panels that we've had over the past couple of hours. Today, which is the first sitting of this Tehran discussion, which is on the 6th edition of the Tehran Forum. We had 50 countries participating with over 200 delegations from those 50 countries. In the first panel, we had the Omani foreign minister address the forum, speak about the issues in the region. Also, we've had statement from the Tajikistani foreign minister as well. We've also had statement from the president of the Iraqi Kurdistan region, who spoke about close relations with Iran, economic ties, and issues in the region as well. And then after a short break, we had discussions from the Armenian representative as well as the Azerbaijani representative. Both of them spoke about the issue concerning both countries as it concerned the war that they had, the issues of refugees and the issue of reconciliation between both sides. And also after that break, we had a new discussion, which is the one we just covered for you right now. We're waiting for the next panel to start here in Tehran. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've just joining us, you're watching the Tehran Forum, the 6th edition of the Tehran Forum, which has been held in the Iranian capital, bringing together dignitaries from 50 countries, and we have over 200 representatives from those 50 dignitaries. And panels are being held on various topics as it concerns the region and also the world. And we've had discussions from various representatives of other countries who have been part of different panels that we've been covering for you. The last one we just had was between the Russian Federation, the former defense minister of Austria, as well as the former prime minister of Iraq, who discussed issues as it concerned each countries and the region as well. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us, once again, you're watching live images coming to you from Tehran, where the 6th edition of the Tehran Forum is being held in the Iranian capital, with over 50 countries participating and over 200 representatives from those 50 countries here in the Iranian capital, where dialogues are being held on various topics as it concerns the region and also global issues of Palestine, of West Asia. The New World Order are being discussed. Recently, we just had a panel on the issue of the New World Order. We had representative of the Russian Federation, as well as the former Iraqi Prime Minister, as well as the former Defense Minister of Austria, who each spoke about their country's perspective on regional and global issues, and that recently ended. We're waiting for a new panel to start, but also we've had speeches from the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, who said that the Gaza crisis has proved that the region must end destructive interference by foreign power, calling for the region to unite and prevent foreign interference from coming into decisions made by governments and the people of the region. He also said that the regional countries can no longer continue with fabricated portrayal of the region and fabricated issues of disinterest, and calling upon other countries within the region to come together, disregard some of the differences they might have in order to bring security to the region and prevent foreign interference. On the same topic, we've had statements by the Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian, who said that the United States is trying to sow discord among regional countries for its own economic benefit. Pezeshkian said that regional countries themselves must be able to secure peace and stability without any foreign interference in that decision making. He also rejected as baseless claims that Iran is moving towards developing nuclear weapon. He reiterated the fact that the country does not want nor need one. We will now continue with the news, beginning with the Gaza Strip, where Israel's bloody strikes continue to claim more innocent lives, killing over 200 Palestinians within 48 hours. At least 125 Palestinians, including many children, fell victim to the latest waves of strikes across the besieged Strip. One of the deadliest attacks struck the Al-Mawasi area near the southern city of Khan Yunis, which was already declared safe zone. At least 36 civilians were killed in the attack. In a separate strikes on residential homes in northern and central Gaza, nearly 20 Palestinians were slaughtered. In Deir al-Balah, a humanitarian warehouse was targeted, killing 10 people, including a 10-day-old infant. The total death toll from the regime's genocide since October 2023 is now exceeded 53,300, with over 121,000 others wounded. Israeli strikes continue to target residential areas in the Gaza Strip, killing more people. Palestinians mourn loved ones and have expressed how they feel about the ongoing genocide. Okay, we might be returning to the live broadcast from the program that we've been covering for you, which is beginning right now. Let's listen in.
Thank you very much. I think it's really obvious for everyone that present or even now former world order is in state of dissolution. No decisive role of UN, international lack. We are now in the state that we can almost name as anomia. That means no international law applicable in a reasonable manner, and of course violence as a method how to reach political goals. International Court of Justice is somewhere, who knows where is it now, it is almost not existing. So we are in a very dangerous period when we have to recognize that we need some order. On previous panel we heard that there is something even among animals, some kind of natural order. But I don't I think we are better than animals. We can reach order based on awareness that we need international law, we need cooperation, and we need balance of interest.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's enough for...
I think it's enough for the start. So we go left to Turkey. How do you see the situation, Your Excellency? Oh, you don't...
Maybe you should go around. I don't have the microphone yet.
Oh, you speak in my mic. It's another sign of Iranian-Turkish cooperation.
Indeed. Indeed. First of all, it's so nice to be back in Tehran, where I spent 2 years, 30 years ago, in 1996, as a junior diplomat. And much has changed in Tehran, all for the better, of course. It has become such a wonderful, such a beautiful city. But unfortunately, I cannot say the same for the world order, unfortunately. When I was here back in 1996, still it was the post-Cold War vibe, where the hope was in the air. Really, we were thinking that, we were at least led to believe that the dialectical evolution of history has come to a final destination, and it was liberal democracy. And we were hoping the wars to fade, the international trade to boom, and the global institutions to work more smoothly. But unfortunately, after 30 years, as you have pointed out, of course, we cannot be further away from this idealistic projection, if I may say so. There are wars all about, from Ukraine to Gaza, from Sudan to many other places. But I think even more seriously is that our security is not only threatened by armed conflict, classical armed conflicts, but we are now faced with a new phenomenon called hybrid warfare, including things like cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, deep intelligence operations and whatnot. But I think even worse than that, of course, is the international community. And the structures that we entrusted to deal with such challenges is completely helpless and paralyzed to find solution to these conflicts. We have been discussing since morning how the United Nations, unfortunately, of course, is completely incapable of even pronouncing itself in some, very outright conflicts like the one, the genocide going on in Gaza, of course. And unfortunately, of course, on the economic side, the situation is not very promising either. The international trade is artificially restricted by, illegal sanctions or by rising protectionism and whatnot. And if I may put it in the very last part of that is also, the whole world is seeing a growing populism or nativism. which is unfortunately, polarizing ourselves both internationally and domestically, creating new barriers between different parts of the world, and unfortunately fomenting planting the seeds of discord through, ideologies and hate crimes like, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, racism, and also xenophobia. So I think there is every reason for us to be pessimistic, I would say. When you ask me about order, whether it is there or not, unfortunately, it is not there. But as an eternal optimist, as a diplomat, I would say that, I still have my hope for the future. Because the fact that all of us from different parts of the world are here in Tehran discussing that and what the new world order should look like, at least give me some hope. And I think, beyond that also, there's no doubt that, no matter what we think of globalization and how we might struggle to fend it off, it is a fact. In the sense that, whatever happens in any part of the world has an impact on the rest of us. Small or large, no country is immune to or isolate itself from the developments in the world. So I think that brings to me, of course, that makes me believe that, security has become truly indivisible. And that we have all become, no matter where we are in the world, become the stakeholders of the same enterprise. I think the president of Iran has said it very clearly. We have a similar saying in Turkish as well. When your neighbor is in misery, you cannot sleep in rest. So I think this sort of understanding is now growing in the whole world. And a few other things, for example, the advances in technologies brings, of course, together with itself
we can continue on the
challenges as well. But so looking into the future, also seeing that, the world has now become a multipolar country with countries like Turkey, Brazil, South Africa, and many others, not shying away from taking on responsibilities, but trying to pursue peace in their own ways. I think there's still light at the end of the dark tunnel that we are in right now.
Very good. You prove to be a real diplomat. Is it working?
Working.
Yeah.
Because they say hope for a diplomat is like water for a fish and courage for a soldier. And that's very fantastic, regardless of the dark picture that you depicted from the realities of international politics today. The end of tunnel, you see light, and that's very good. Now we go to India, Mr. Joshi.
Thank you, Ambassador Sajadpur. Such a pleasure being back at the IPIS and at a panel hosted by you.
Thank you.
And great panelists we have who've been doing a lot of work actually in conflict resolution. So it's a pleasure being with all of them here. The question about order and disorder, and we've been talking about convergence and divergence, all the time, these are binaries. I'll take 2 points, two short points. My first point is that there have been large global shifts. All of us have been talking about them through this conference. I won't go into the details. But fundamentally, in those large global shifts, the nature of power is changing. And that is something we need to appreciate. We need to understand that before we start talking about disorder and order. What is the shift in the nature of power? Important shift. See, dominance, hegemonic dominance, which used to be, and dominance through brute force, which used to be one of the instruments of power, is no longer the currency which is going to be lasting forever now. It is under threat. What is the new currency of power? Just look around you. Resilience. Resilience is the new currency of power which is actually gaining strength. If you see the happenings around you today, you're seeing many David and Goliath battles. Goliath, huge, strong, David armed with a slingshot. Overturning, challenging, big power hegemony, and turning things completely around upside down. It is also to do with the nature of state capacity which is deteriorating. And obviously, West COVID was the first instant where we saw the strongest nations show their weaknesses. They suffered the most. Some of the weaker nations actually proved far more resilient. So there's a fundamental shift in the nature of power taking place. That is the first thing. Second thing is, then we start talking about order and disorder, convergence, divergence. When we start thinking in terms of these, I would say, bipolar, belonging to a bipolar world order, which is dead and gone anyway, finished long ago. That shifted. If you start looking at the idea of order and disorder, the Eastern philosophy, the Eastern mindset fundamentally is that order and disorder are cycles, and each contains the seed of its opposite. Inherent in order are the seeds of disorder. And you see it all around in every society. No matter how organized, no matter how regimented, there are the seeds of disorder in that. And the opposite is also true. Within disorder are always the seeds of order. Then it is a matter of what kind of political leadership takes over, takes control. Which seeds are you going to be nurturing? Which seeds will you water? That becomes a question. And that is how these cycles are going to be moving in the future. So these are the two important points I'd like to make.
Excellent. So you are suggesting there is so much dynamism in order and disorder, and the seeds of disorder is planted when there is an order, and you cannot really go to a very linear thinking.
You cannot go to linear thinking, and you see these shifts taking place all around. Even if you look at the most, we say that there was order in the world during the days of the Cold War. Was there? Was there really order in the world during the days of the Cold War?
So there is
nonsense.
Okay. There is a very interesting shift in our panel. We go from India to Romania. Please, Foreign Minister.
Yes, thank you so much. Okay, order means peace. Let's be simple. Order means peace. Where it's disorder. The fact that we are seeing around us either wars, proper wars, or cold wars, some other kind of cold wars, or wars to come, speaks that we are living or are crossing a time of disorder. The variables of any order are the games of interest and the balance of power. And the nature of the order depends very much on the nature of power. It could be a military power, it could be an economic power, it could be a cultural power, and so on. And I believe that if we have to look forward a new order, we perhaps should look to the components of the power. I believe, and during the lunch it was very well noticed that, or stressed that we have to understand that the nature of power is changing. It's not anymore the alliances of military powers which opposes some other alliances. It's about the capacity to network, the capacity to establish from case-to-case basis a solidarity of interest. And the participants to these groups should achieve some kind of a partnership with variable geometry. Well, it is in the past, maybe in Europe, after the Congress of Wien in 1815, when we have established the concert of nations, everything was fluid, and therefore you could avoid wars for about 1 century. When alliances became ossified, the Central Powers and the Entente, then the war became unavoidable, and we had wars. What we have to do is precisely to avoid this kind of so-called permanent, which are not permanent alliances, but to generate, based on the solidarity of interest, the strategy of common projects, which certainly is grouping, is networking participants in groups with variable geometry. I just want to add one single idea. For 2 centuries, I believe, it was Europe which decided the rules of the game, the rules of the order, because the order means rules and institutions. Rules and institutions. And it was Europe for 2 centuries which decided which are the rules of the global order. Then it follows 1 century of America. It was the Pax Americana for 1 century. Now the Pax Americana is exhausted, is over. I'm not going into detail why, but I think it's obvious. And I think that we are living now the century of Asia. This is the place where from the new model of the world order is going to grow. And I think that from that point of view, it's good that we are here, and certainly, if possible, we should cooperate. As European, I wouldn't like to see an Asia model growing up without our contribution. And I know that if we do not, support you in order to move in that direction, it is a risk that this new order becomes against us, not without us but against us. So my plea is let's work together for a new order, but which will be based on Asiatic models and on Asian culture.
So you end in a very important point, that is the role of Asia in new setting, and we have Russia right now, which is a Eurasian power. Mr. Zolotin, and actually he's the head of a very important center, which I have visited, Center for Central Asian Studies in Moscow, which is also Asia Center. Please, Mr. Zolotin.
Thank you. Just now, I think we have a Russian interpreter who is good Russian, better with bad English. I will try to speak Russian if possible. No, we haven't. You have interpreter.
Your English is good.
Excuse me. We have interpreter. You have find it by interpreter. First of all, сначала хочу поздравить. Please take the. You have Russian interpreter in Iran language. Excuse me?
No, but we can understand.
Хочу поздравить хозяев институт IPIS Министерства иностранных дел Ирана с впечатляющим стартом тегеранского диалога, который, надеюсь, станет ежегодным. Do you hear? No, it's work. I mean work in Persian, in Iranian language.
Number two. So,
okay.
I don't need.
یه شروع بسیار قویه گفتگو تهران که امیدوار هستم که به صورت ساله برگزار شود. صدای من میاد؟ فکر میکنم به زبان در خط فارسی باید و شبکه فارسی باید خط ما رو بشنویم.
You should use the Persian channel, the Farsi channel, in order to listen to the interpretation.
اجازه بفرمایید من صحبت کنم.
Allow me to speak now.
روسی به فارسی در شبکه 3. روسی به فارسی در شبکه 3. شبکه 3 تشکر میکنم، ممنونم. در طول امروز، در طول روز ما فقط اجازه بفرمایید که دوستان باز بشن. دیپلمات ها دارن سخنرانی میکنن در طول روز.
Diplomats have been speaking during the day.
با احترام به دیپلمات ها زبانی که استفاده میکنن
while respecting the diplomats.
به خاطر همین چیزی که واقعا روش فکر میکنم میخوام عرض کنم خدمتتون.
I want to tell you what I am thinking.
امروز در شروع
Today,
در صبح مقام معظم رهبری یادآور شدند که مهمترین
the leader
آخر قرن 20 در مورد
of the Islamic Revolution reminded us of the disintegration of the former Soviet Union
که در مورد وارد شدن پاکستان امریکان سخن گفتند اون موقع، ولی الان این پاکستان امریکان به بنبست رسیده. کی پیروز شده از دست دادن تعادل، از اون چی بود رقابت بین دو تا جهان. اون موقع در مورد جهان سوم میگفتند.
At that time, they spoke about making progress. Today, there's talk of further expansion and growth and progress of China.
این به ما فرصت می‌دهد که ما صحبت کنیم در مورد کشورهای اکثریت جهان.
This is an opportunity to speak about many world countries.
کانسپسیون نظم چند قطبی، جهان چند قطبی. البته ما خیلی وقت از قرون میانه در وضعیت چند قطبی زندگی نمی‌کردیم، ولی این ارتباط نزدیک داریم به نظم یا بی‌نظمی.
We are discussing the issue of convergence or divergence.
ریاست جدید چه نتیجه گرفتند از اون که دوره پایان شد، به پایان رسید و چه اتفاقی افتاده؟ حتما نتیجه گرفتند، ولی نتیجه‌ای که بران حساب کردند ایدئولیست‌ها در کشورهای ما. آمریکا با ترامپ تاکید میکنند تو باید تابع بشی و این مشکل است. شما میتونید سوال کنید با چی مربوط میشود این که ما میتونیم صحبت کنیم در مورد وضعیت تغییر و بهبود.
We can talk about the improvement of situation with respect to Russia-US relations today.
در این مرحله اول باید اشاره کنم که ما نباید اغراق کنیم از اون سخی که ما توش بودیم که روابط ما نزول داشتند با بایدان.
We should not exaggerate about such relations.
و آشکار است که این بهبود و نرمال شدن وضعیت تا حدی که در حال هست، من دارم به پایان میرسم، مربوط می شود که ترامپ داره نتیجه میگیرد
This improvement of relations is due to the fact that Trump is getting to the conclusion he has been looking for, that is that the war has been lost in Ukraine. And the U.S. did not want Russia to have more relations, closer relations with Iran and China. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It was.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation and for the warm welcome. I feel really, emotionally charged, the last few days being here with you in Tehran and enjoying meeting many of the Iranian brothers and sisters. I also feel special privilege, I think, being the first woman on stage. So I think that's a sign of hope, no? Yes. So the privilege of being last to speak is that you hear everyone else. The problem is that they've all said what you wanted to say. So let me just join the club of optimists, also by the nature of being a diplomat, and say that we really need to be optimists. And also let me join by saying that these binary conversions, diversions, wifaq, iftiraq, are really abstract constructs, because I think at any one point we are at a crossroad of both. And if we want to take agency seriously, then we need to know that it is also our responsibility to work to escape all of the conditions that would produce this diversions, and we can work for convergence. There is also another binary that I thought that was repeated many times over since the morning that I wanted to also address and say, this regional versus international, I think, is also another false dichotomy. Everything that is regional in our neighborhood and in any place in the world has a very strong international aspect to it. A lot of the international has a very core regional interest that impact us. So instead of, for example, viewing a close relationship between any one country or regional powers with international partners as a source of threat, I think what is important is to view it as a leverage that can be used for not only the benefit of the region, but the benefit of world order. At the end of the day, I was very warmly, very much appreciative of what His Excellency the President tried to emphasize of how connected we are. And so through this connectedness, I think it is very wrong for us to think of these binary divisions. One last comment, I think it's also kind of a trap to do one of two things. Either romanticize the past, to say, oh, it was better 1,000 years ago, 600 years ago, or 100 years ago, or even 50 years ago, because the past is always rosy. And another related problem is also to blame others for what we are facing. I think we are at a horrific moment where our brothers and sisters in Palestine, in occupied Palestine, in Gaza and the West Bank, are being slaughtered, starved, and denied basic human needs with an alarming acceptance and normalization of the situation and complete paralysis of world order. But it's also a time to reflect what got us here, all of us, collectively. What got us here, and how can we have lessons learned to move out of this through our agency, and also through a different perspective and a different relationship between ourselves, but also with our international partners.
Excellent. So, very good points, and thank you so much, especially on bringing the issue of agency. And I think we have to focus a little bit on this issue, and I put some ideas on this regard. But I really enjoyed the first round of inputs by our colleagues in this panel. I think we were enriched, and the only place that enrichment hasn't any problem. Huh? So enrichment intellectually and practically. But I gathered two major trends in the discussion that we had thus far. One is structural changes are happening in the concept of power, in shift of power, in place of power. Europe is not anymore the center of the world. We have Asia, and we have other structural issues like the deadlock of Pax Americana or the other structural dimensions which shape international order. The second point is agency, that we have now multiple levels of agency and different agents in the world which are shaping the new realities of international system. If these two is somehow the summation and conceptualization of what we had, now I start the second round with this question, that how our colleagues and panelists see the issue of agency from their own national perspective. And as I start from Turkey, I have to be correct, Turkey. We also in Persian use Turkey, and I have to inform you that now you have a microphone, it's not exchange, so you can own it, and great, you start. Great. So the question is, how you see the issue of agency at large, and how you apply it to Turkey, and what Turkey is doing in shaping international order. And the same question goes on for the other panelists. Please.
I think this question about agency is very much important. How are we going to implement the ideas that we all agree on? What would be the agency to put them in an orderly fashion? And I think, I mean, first of all, before coming to Turkey and what we do in our own region and beyond, I think that requires, this question of agency requires us to think about the United Nations and the United Nations Security Council first and foremost. Because it's obvious that this structure, which represents the power balance of 80 years ago, definitely must be reformed. It's again obvious that the permanent 5 countries with veto powers does not ensure the peaceful settlement of disputes. On the contrary, it is, on so many occasions, has become the part of the problem itself. So that's why I think we need a reformed United Nations Security Council for us to reach an effective agency, an effective multilateralism in that regard. That's why, of course, I mean, President Erdogan always say that a fairer world is indeed possible when we realize that the world is bigger than 5. So I think that we definitely need to keep in mind. But of course, I mean, we in our own regions, all the countries, and as I said, I mean, the world has truly become a multipolar world, with countries like Turkey and many others not shying away from taking on responsibility, but pursuing peace with their own capabilities and with their own competitive advantages. And Turkey is definitely one of the examples of that. We try in our own ways and within our own capabilities, means and capabilities, to do the best we can in order to generate peace and stability within our region. And I don't want to, you know, I mean, speak too much of our area, but I mean, just look at what happened in the last week in Istanbul. The direct talks after 3 years, the first direct talks after 3 years between Russia and Ukraine has taken place in Istanbul through our facilitation. You know, I mean, the very first encounter between US and US and Syria at the level of foreign ministers took place in Antalya, for example, where Secretary Rubio and Minister Sheybani met and discussed about what they can do in order to give Syria a chance for development and prosperity and such. And of course, Iran has had its first round of talks after a long period of time with the E33 countries about their nuclear. So we try our best in order to bring parties together and provide them a platform of dialogue and diplomacy. Because we believe that only through diplomacy and dialogue we can tackle those problems. As many said throughout the morning, I mean, we need to look at each other not from a prism of threats, but from a prism of opportunities. And all we do in Turkey is to try to create a platform, create a venue where different parties can look at each other through that prism.
Thank you. Now we go to Mr. Jushi, India.
Well, I would endorse what is coming from Turkey, so that is primarily what India has been trying to do. We believe in dialogue. I think India is a place where you can have any kind of conversation. No one is a pariah. No one is excluded. And all kinds of conversations, you've been to our dialogues, it is just like the IPS where every conversation can take place. So that is the importance of dialogue, getting people together and having free and frank conversations. That's the only way you can move forward and resolve conflict. If you exclude people from the room and say they are not allowed to come here and speak, there's a problem. Then the conflict, you have already resolved that you will not resolve the conflict. So that is a dead end. Now, where do multilateral institutions fit in? They are facing problems. They're primarily facing problems because the ones who created them have been undermining them themselves.
Yeah.
Now, because they've not found them useful enough anymore. Things have moved. Centers of power have shifted. And it is not just a multipolar world. See, the powers of the P5, the big 5 of yesteryears, today find it difficult to come to grips with the changed realities, where powers have shifted. So there is this effort as to weaken that institution, and it is a body which is observed more in the breach than the order. So that needs to change. How it will change, I do not know, because no one gives up power easily. Meanwhile, countries do recognize, and many countries like India do recognize, that we are not just in a multipolar world. The world is more complicated. It has become multinodal. There are far too many, when we speak of agency. Agency today is far more amorphous, far more distributed. Where does agency lie? So many of the decisions which get taken under the veil of states have the origins and roots somewhere else. We've seen that operation time and time again. So how do you take care of a world where large corporations, civil society members, where one incident in Gaza sparks outrage right across the world, where people come together, come out on the streets to protest. So they have agency. This is a new kind of agency in a new kind of global world. And no matter what can say, you can deride globalization, you can call globalists names. Globalism is impossible to destroy in the world we are living today. It will change shape. I can tell you how it will change shape. That is for later. But it is changing shape. It is moving. But globalists are here to stay.
Excellent. So we have a very complex agency, if I'm inferring from your talks rightly, and we have also the concept of institutions and how we interact between these two is a very matter of interest and intellect. Now, Mr. Zlatelin.
Okay, I will try in English in order not to do difficulties for you. First of all, about United Nations. I agree. The world is more than 5 members of Security Council. I think, I'm sure that the majority, the whole here in this hall will agree. At least we need to hear the voice of United Nations, of United States, France, England, and China, to be sure that we also agree with this. Of course, we in Russia have a vision how to enlarge the Security Council, and it was officially proclaimed whom we would see in addition with this crucial voice of veto in Security Council. But at least we need to know that the good is better with the good is better with the лучший, как сказать? The better is good is better than better. You see, for this it's very difficult to implement this idea because every country have their own vision who need to be in this Security Council, and we need to have a conclusion. Just now, for several years, we have discussion and we didn't conclude, didn't keep to result. But I need to add about another agencies. We create with the participation of Islamic Republic of Iran, BRICS, you know, Shanghai Organization. This is a new type of organizations which try to implement interest within Eurasia, where we live. During the first part of our forum, very oftenly you speak about region. So when we talk about region, we could name Iran, we could name Turkey, we could name India, China. Russia is the member of this Eurasian region. I don't know whether or not United States or, for example, England is the member of the region. We are not the member of the region. And we just, or Europe, European Union is not the member of this region here in Eurasia. That's why I think we have many things and thoughts about how to develop this idea of regional cooperation. This is which I'm very fond about. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we go to Mr. York.
Well, I'm not going to speak about the Permanent Council of United Nations. I agree with everything has been said. Yes, I agree that, you know, the new structures of the future order or order in building are emerging from Eurasia. I agree, and it was mentioned. As far as my country is concerned, I'm a member, well, my country is a member of the European Union, and I think that the proper answer to your question, or the best answer I can give, is to speak for 1 or 2 minutes about what European Union could do, because unlike my dear friend Jürgen Fassleben in the previous panel, I believe that indeed, on one hand, European Union is irrelevant strategically in this moment.
Irrelevant?
Irrelevant, not relevant, yes. And this is not a fate, this is not the destiny of the European Union. European Union could be relevant and should do things. At the same time, following my first ideas, I don't think that is a time for the European Union to shape the world order. But I think that the European Union should engage in negotiation, in talks with those who are in Eurasia, Asia, the main actors, the main architects, better said, of the new order, in order to make sure that this order would include also our aspiration, our values, our interests. From this perspective, I think that the European Union should do urgently the following. Number one, to give up the approach consisting in ideologization of the international relations. We are extremely ideological, we should be non-ideological at all. Secondly, we should cease being the last, perhaps, champion of neoconservatism. I think that Trump administration is tackling more realism in the international relations, and the European Union remained, to a certain extent, the last neocon. I think that this should be also eradicated for the sake of the European Union, not for the good of the whole world. Number three, I think that the European Union should make a very important choice about its legal identity. Are we a soft power, or if you want, geopolitical identity? Are we a soft power as we were supposed to be, and that was our idea in the beginning? The grandmother of the European Union, was planning a Europe which, number one, protected us, the Europeans, against the war between ourselves, and secondly, would spread the peace in Europe. Now it becomes some worrisome, and I think that we have to make a choice. Third or fourth, we have to choose between war and peace. War and peace. And speaking about war, I'm not thinking only to war in Ukraine, so this is the most obvious one.
I have more wars and elsewhere, not only.
Absolutely, and which I consider to be not a war, or not primarily a war between Ukrainians and Russians, but between the global West, or Euro-Atlantic West, and Russia. Ukraine is just a victim on the ground. And my last point, we have to make a choice. I mean, the European Union should make a choice between America and Asia. We were dependent on security, on America for our security, basically hard security, for decades. I think it doesn't mean that we have to, seize or become, the rivals or the enemies of United States. But I think that if we speak about accents, for us, it is a time to make a choice between the two. Where is our future partner? And I think that this is one. It's not about replacing, and I will end with that. It's not about replacing United States, America with Asia. It's not about that. Yeah. But it's about adding to our transatlantic relations a special relation with Asia, and Asia players, Iran, China, Japan, India, Turkey, and also Russia. I agree that Russia is an Euro-Asiatic countries. And this accent is extremely important, and I think these are the choices, quickly speaking, in front of which European Union finds itself today. Just
very good. I'm really happy to see how the issue of agencies looked from different angles: Europeans, the Union, Russia, and the other parts of the world. So we have not just multiple agencies, but multiple forms of exerting the agency, which I think is very interesting, this panel. Now we go to Ambassador Manol to tell us how you see the issue of agency from the Swedish side, and also you are the only lady in our panel. How you see the issue of agency from the, let's say, other side of issues that we have to be concerned of?
I'll take the first one. The second one, I wasn't nominated to speak on behalf of all of the ladies, so I'll skip on that.
But look at you as the representative of a thought. Yeah.
Thank you. So I will say that, first of all, we have to go back to what I said. We have to understand what got us where we are. If we look at, very briefly, if we look at this wave of globalization and wave of New World Order, and then the ramification of it, which really instigated a lot of identity politics and identity conflicts. Trying to not escape globalization or being a global, but trying to really champion what it means to be Iranian, what it means to be Saudi, what it means to be Palestinian, what it means to be European. That, I think, will explain a lot of the currents that we see worldwide, in the Arab and the Islamic world, here, Asia, Europe, everywhere else, even in the United States, we saw the ramification of that. So that's maybe one of the lessons learned. The second is that you really cannot escape the grassroots to the issues. So while, for example, in Europe, in the past some years, we have been lectured to come and take the lesson of Europe in managing our relationship, with our neighbors. Then all of a sudden you have Ukraine pop up, and then you have, that become a challenge and an obstacle. You have the issue of Palestine, where we keep saying that if we don't address the grassroots of the issue, which is the occupation, you will always have problems occurring. So it's sometimes a dormant conflict, sometimes it erupts, and every time it erupts, it's even more violent than the cycle before. That's another lessons learned. Also, which is something that is very important, trust is not something that can come easily. Not between brothers and one family, a European family, or the Arab countries of the Gulf and Iran and others. It's not easy, and words have to match action. Now, what did we do in Saudi Arabia? I think we had, in the past, maybe a decade or so, but more precisely 5 or 6 years, really focused on taking agency at the national level. Making sure that the objective, even of our foreign policy, is how do we service Saudis? How do we service ourselves? And this is through capacity building, through learning best practices. Also, if we really want to live in a prosperous world, and if we really want to be, as the Crown Prince had said, the new Europe of the world, we have to take care of our neighbors. So our focus was also on de-escalation, but not in a way that would bury the grassroots of the problems that we have with our family members, the wider family, or with our partners, but to address them right on, head on. And I think the rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Iran is a testimony to that. But more so, we also view ourselves not just as a regional power, but we also take responsibility at the global stage. And hence, for example, you saw the talks that was hosted in Saudi Arabia between Russia and Ukraine, and the fact that we used our good offices between the two countries. I don't think that any one of our countries should be choosing. It's not about taking the US out because they failed at something, or bringing Russia in, or bringing some kind of an Asian association, or seeing if Europe is relevant or not. I think we have to go back to this connectedness. That is extremely important. All of us have leverage. Together, we even can do better and more.
Right.
And we always have also the responsibility to teach those who we see are going the wrong path what we know about correcting this path, rather than neglecting it, and rather than going into a path of confrontation, rather than a path of convergence.
Thank you. So, unlike my colleagues here, I'm coming from small countries. All those countries are from 3, 5 to 100 times even more bigger than Croatia. So, but I think it's beautiful. You can try. Okay. So, what is the perspective, I think, of most small countries in the international community? Of course, we cannot be superpower. We cannot fight really with big states, with alliances, or so what. But we can defend ourselves. We proved it. 30 years ago, we had a liberation war and we won with little help of our friends, as a bit was told perhaps. But our only interest is to have peace, because small countries can be completely destroyed in wars, and it's for us essential to have international community based on rule of law, based on strong institution, and of course some kind of solidarity. This is shield for small countries, and we can survive only having those three important principles. So, European Union. I'm very proud during my mandate my country became a member of European Union, and we consider it as a step forward to our security and our development, and really membership to European Union helped us a lot. And I completely agree with agenda envisioned by Europe, but it's not possible to be performed now because the European Union is not ready for this. It's not ready because we are missing some important elements. European Union, in my opinion, and I'm probably very rare of European politicians or former politicians thinking on that way. European Union should be United States of Europe, with single foreign policy, with single security policy, with more coherent global approach to international scene. That's the only possibility for European Union to be partner building international peace and new structure or whatever, and having place on the round table between together with other countries. So I claim that future of European Union will be good and successful and important if we transform our organization, it's not state unfortunately, to United States of Europe. That's first precondition. Unfortunately, still most or almost all politicians are following our wording, it's better to be first in the village than second in the city. And this is a big obstacle among politicians. So we have to finally elect politicians in particular countries being aware of the importance of European unity. That's very important. And question, should we choose between China, United States, Russia? No, we have to be partners with all of them. With all of them, equal partner, and fight together for more secure world. Thank you.
Very interesting and dynamic discussion. Actually, what I gather is the issue of agency is so interesting to discuss, and it really has impact on the emerging global order. Now, since we have not just agency on the panel, we have agency in the audience. Huh? So we turn to the audience for a few questions. We don't have that much time. The first question goes to Professor Bakshi, who has some comments. He is our professor from Turkey, long-time friend, and well respected inside our country. Yes?
No, take.
Oh, man.
You would take this.
Turkish.
Student teacher. Thank you very much. It was really very interesting. Some comments for the lady, first of all. How do you see the Islamic woman's position in the new emerging world order? Because the women are suffering mostly in the Islamic countries, in quotation. This is very clear. And you are probably having some ideas how to prove it. Just teach us. Second one, India. India is really interesting. A new emerging power, not only the recent Pakistani-Indian conflict, but also China and India having some troubles. My question directly, India's rising, would it lead to the membership of the United Nations as a permanent one? Because you became number 5 in world economy so far. Russia is interesting. You have spoken in Russian, I didn't understand it, but in English, much better. Could you please explain me how long can we be the witness of this, I quote it, unnecessary conflict between Ukraine and Russia? More than 3 years. Is it not enough? You should be the country which is making this, I would say, advantageous position that you come to the table and talk. To leave the table or saying that you want to come to the table but not come later on created such a big disappointment in my country and in the world. Tomorrow, what is your president is going to say to President
I just
Trump?
need to phone him.
No, wait.
And small is beautiful, I agree. Small is beautiful, definitely.
Yeah.
But,
we have limited time.
Yes, because of the European Union, both of them I would like to say. Everybody is talking that European Union is not going to have a big future and European Union should become United States of America. Europe is a normative one. We are moving to more transactional one. My question is to you. How do you bring it together, this transactional